Gonna go live. There we go. All right, and we're live again. This changed a little bit. What's up, everyone? Tuning in. We're dancing as always. Evan is dancing in San Francisco. He's not on video again, but I promise you he's dancing. Welcome to anybody that's tuning in, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on the replay. Put something in the comments. Tell me what your spirit animal is in the comments. And if you're watching on the replay, just comment replay. And that'll help us know that you watched it during the replay. And if you ask questions and we don't answer on the replay, it's because you're watching the replay and we didn't have a chance to actually hear your question. So we will answer it in 2 weeks if you ask us a question. Welcome to Tales of Bastunia Facebook Live, Beast Creation. I am your co-host and the fool, Dylan Barr, co-creator of Tales of Bastunia and the Unfound Adventures. I have with me Argus Aurelian of Lady Fair, also known as co-creator Matt Emery in Tales of Bastunia Unfound Adventures, and the man behind the scenes, speak.
Hi.
Hello.
Evan. Evan is with us as well, co-creators of Tales of Bastunia and Unfound Adventures. Evan will be working on a beast creation.
Man, we lost my screen, didn't we?
No, we didn't. Hold on. We just haven't added it yet. I'm adding it to the stage now.
He's our co-creator.
Today we are creating a beast for young Josiah from the Port Huron, Michigan area, who created 2 beasts. He created his first one, and then we started looking at his second beast, and he goes, you know what? I think I did better on this one. Can you create this instead? And we said yes, and my mother sponsored him. Shout out to Michelle Kinna out there for sponsoring today's beast. That's everything that I got. Matt, how you doing today? You're not in Austin, Texas right now, are you?
Nope. I'm in.
Where are you?
Doing great.
Where?
Your event, yeah. Orlando.
Nice.
Yeah. Here's a little view. Somewhere out there is Walt Disney.
Wow, that guy's still alive, huh?
Yep, somewhere.
And Evan, you're not from Orlando area, right? It's just Florida.
I am not. I'm from Florida, from Miami originally. Wouldn't recommend it as a general rule. Sorry, Miamians.
Anyone watching Miami, Evan doesn't like you. If you're tuning in, tell us where you are tuning in from. Go ahead, put in the comments if you want to ask us any questions. You can. Evan, you are in San Francisco right now, correct?
Correct.
How are things at LinkedIn? How's Orlando, Matt?
still
things
employed.
Are good.
Good.
Okay. Let's go.
There might be a delay on my side.
Let's talk about something else.
If there isn't a delay on my side, I apologize. We have questions. Thanks everybody that tuned in the public Facebook group to ask questions for today. We will be answering them as Evan works on a rodent/feline beast. And if you've tuned in before, you know that Evan always kind of practices before we get started. So my first question for you, Evan, is, are we diving right in to Centrac right now, or is this your practice?
No, it's not a fish. No, this is not my practice. Well, I mean, I guess it is. It's kind of my practice. So something that I would like to speak to at some point today is that, you know, that for anyone who has tuned in the past with these, it's really just kind of a straight ahead shot of, hey, sit down and draw, and something comes out. And that's great. We've been very fortunate that what has come out has been of not the kill it with fire variety or level of quality. But I do think that it is a massive misrepresentation.
Lost you at massive misrepresentation. Oh, no. I don't know where he was going, so I can't say what's a massive we lost you at massive misrepresentation.
Oh, sorry. So the thing is that it's all pretty much a massive misrepresentation of how the process would actually work. Which is to say there's no planning involved, there's no advanced preparation, there's no problem solving that really helps that process along. A lot of this would be and should be very, very iterative. And that's kind of lost when we're in this sort of straight ahead, just sit down and pump something out mode. And that's really because, we're doing this live and we have a very limited amount of time in which to execute it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What, so in a perfect
I
world,
just think it's an important call out that, for anyone who's sitting and watching this in the same way that you might watch like a time lapse of a painting, that's not how it really works. So I just want to dispel any illusions about that. A lot of the straight ahead nature of these is because I've been doing this for a long time and not because this is reflective of how one should actually approach designing from the ground up.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It does. And it might lead to more questions today of what it would take to design from the ground up. Is it cool if we do a quick shift so we know what Evan is stemming off of? And then what we can do is actually we can describe what I've done so far with Josiah on this beast to create it and give Evan the information somewhat needed for him to work on these. And then Evan, I'd love to hear from you. Say, hey, if you wave a magic wand or if someone out there wants to do something similar, what would you recommend that process look like? Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. First, I'm going to show off Centrac. So this is the picture that Evan is using to stem off of for today's calling or beast. We use those words interchangeably. Dylan is getting better at using the word beast. This is Josiah's calling, Josiah's beast that he drew. So what we did is we told Josiah a little bit about the world of Bastunia, a world where everyone is gifted at birth a spiritual beast that is signified as their calling or a totem that they can look to at all times to say, this is my calling in the world of Bastunia. This is what I am destined to do. There are 3 types of paths as you go down the history of Bastunia. Those paths are builders, those that create the world that people live in Bastunia. There are explorers, people that adventure outside their comfort zones and philosophize and explore the world of Bastunia. And there are defenders, those that live a life to protect the brothers and sisters of Bastunia. So out of those 3 paths, for Centrac, Josiah chose the path of builder. He says, I want to make things. I want to create things. Matt, is there anything else as I mute myself because there's a bunch of motorcycles that are getting ready to go by? Anything else you'd want to add when we talk about builders in Bastunia?
Yeah, we have subdivided the builders into their own 4 classes. So if you have watched the last 2 sessions, we did a defender medic, we did a defender, what was it? Defender shield was Ashland's beast, Ailish, yeah, or stealth, excuse me. And so the builders have 4 groups too. There's supporter, there's maker, there's breaker, and there's strategist. And today's, not to steal your thunder, if this is where you're going next, is a supporter.
Yeah. So builder, supporter. So these types of callings help makers, help breakers do their job. They like to be the role players, the people behind the scenes, not the people that are saying, hey, if we're doing a project, give me the ball, I'm going to lead it from the front. These are the people that want to be behind the scenes and support others in what they're doing. There's a lot of people that will take our quiz, which you can find in our public Facebook group, in our private Facebook group. And actually out of the builders, I feel most people are getting the supporter builder, which is pretty cool. So Josiah chose that he wanted to be a builder and he wanted to be a supporter. After that, I said, hey, tell me a little bit about this beast. Like, I see what it looks like, but how would you describe him? So he would describe him as like a feline rodent type beast, like a weasel. And he's a little bit smaller. And he says he really likes to keep his hands like this. That's how he makes things. And he's really fast. And he told me as well, he's got the ability to dig underground to elude anybody. And I said, all right, well, if he's a builder, where would he live in the world of Bastunia? And he said that he would actually live closer to the defenders in no wasteland. in Bastunia. So I described the area of no wasteland and what it's like and what exists out there. And one of the things, for those that have been following us on social media, knows that in no wasteland exists the Colosseum, which is this giant battleground for people to practice their defender skills with each other. So they're ready to defend the world of Bastunia from these incoming Azigra, these dark entities from the cosmos. So Josiah said, he's like, well, I want to have a builder beast that can help people in the Colosseum. And I said, well, what would he build? What would he create? And Josiah says that Centrac would build and would create the weapons and the armor for those that are battling in the Colosseum. So I took all of that from Josiah, I wrote it down, and I gave it to Evan. And now Evan is slowly working on those bullet points. Hey, we know it's a builder. We know it's a builder supporter. We know it's kind of like a feline rodent type. So probably a little bit smaller. It's quick, likes to dig, and it creates armor and weapons for those fighting in the Colosseum. So Evan, I know this isn't the ideal setup, but as an illustrator, when you hear that, what goes through your mind of, all right, where should I get started? What pops the most that I need to accentuate when creating this beast, so on and so forth. And if you have any questions for Evan, drop them in the chat.
Yeah, please do. So, I mean, obviously the fact that a lot of these beasts take their cues from real life animals is the obvious place to start. Mm-hmm. That said, you know, I do try pretty hard to make sure that we're not just drawing, you know, a cat with interesting stripes or, you know, a ferret that looks mildly different or is just anthropomorphized in some way. The goal is to create a creature that looks like it is something fantastical that does not exist, that we have not seen before. Now that said, this is all very much in like a comic book aesthetic. That's the nature of Bastunia and the world that Matt and Dylan have created. And so I try to keep in touch with that as well. And that means a lot of, in many cases, a lot of stylized forms, a lot of very angular body shapes, or body locomotion, things like that. But it does all come back to those early touch points, one of which is what sort of real life animal kingdom touchstones are we pulling from? And obviously what class, what is the nature of this beast? You know, it's important that a beast feels at least somewhat like the class it's meant to represent, the calling that it's meant to represent. A builder beast should not feel like an explorer beast. There should be a pretty clear distinction there. You know, an explorer beast might have wings, or as Matt said last time, antlers, something that compels you to grab hold and ride it, as opposed to a builder beast that looks like it might construct something or engineer something, or in this case, serving as a support in some way, be ready to, you know, help anyone who needs it. That's usually the tougher part of the design process, like figuring out a fun way to make a feline or rodent-like creature or amalgamation is actually the easier part, because that's just, you know, making cool creatures, really. But making it feel like it belongs in the world, like it serves a deliberate role in the world and in the narrative is where the challenge comes in. That's the fun part.
So main thing being, it's great to know, hey, I can draw from feline animal kingdom, right? Or I can draw from the rodent animal kingdom. We also know that it's fantasy, which I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Evan. I'm sure if this was a sci-fi world that Matt and I created, a feline beast is probably going to look a little bit different. Or if it's like a dark horror, it's going to look a little bit different. But you're saying that's the easier part. The tougher part is knowing its classification, because the way you would draw Centrac right now as a builder would be different if we were saying, hey, this is a defender shield.
Yes, exactly. You know, a defender, as you guys have seen, a defender would probably be in some way bulkier, look like it can really take or give a hit. You know, in this case, this is more of a support. Now this is a burrowing a burrowing creature, a burrowing calling, a burrowing beast. And so things that I thought were important were, the really large forearms and claws, the sort of sloth-like claws that might suggest, the physiology of a mole. The really large cat or rodent-like ears, maybe both in this case, that really suggest that sound, the vibrations in the ground are the kind of thing that would really resonate with this character, with this creature. And then, of course, the body language. They're very long and twisty, kind of like a rodent, and kind of like in reference to the way that Centrek sort of keeps his hands together. I know that the idea there is that Centrek uses his, auric power to create things, and that's the hand gesture that they make when they are creating things. But I'm pulling that and sort of pushing it in the direction of what does a rat look like when it's standing on its hind legs. And, they always kind of curl their hands inward, or a ferret in this case, they curl their hands inward and kind of put them together. And so you get this sort of, this sort of rodent looking, sneaky looking, scheming looking kind of shape to the hands that I'm trying to leverage, and also help serve that narrative purpose of Centrek keeping their hands together, which was, an important call out for this design here. So those are some of the things that are going through my head as we speak. As I said, this is very much an exercise in like straight ahead drawing. I have 1 hour to produce something, and so it's on me to get something out there that is at least a little bit presentable for that first design pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to come back and ask you, like, as you continue to draw, what your ideal setup would be, right? Because we're doing things a little bit different. And just for anyone here that knows, we actually have some people in the chat saying you're watching with their daughter. Matt, if you have the name, I'd love, it just says Facebook user on my side. Thank you for watching with your daughter. And they say she's obsessed, she wants the comics, and she is set on creating a beast, which is awesome. So if your daughter was coming in to create a beast, what the process would now look like is, Matt, we can drop off the screen share for you. I'm going to actually screen share mine real quick. What the process would look like is my screen now showing? Oh no.
Yep, you looking at the founding circle?
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. Not what I wanted to do. I'll stop screen share. I'll move here and I'll re-screen share. So if you're watching here, Brittany, hey, Brittany, nice to meet you. Thanks for tuning in. So hopefully you're listening to some Noah Khan and watching with your daughter. I will show her what it would look like to create her own beast in the world of Bastunia. So now what we do, we've gotten a little bit better since working with Josiah. We have our clients, our backers, their kids. We have some people that are 30, 40 years old that are creating their own calling in Bastunia. But for what young kids, what they would do is we have a small worksheet that they would fill out to give to us before we jump on a call to ask them more questions about this beast. So first thing we want to know is this calling going to be a builder? Are they going to be an explorer? Are they going to be a defender? And it's one of the reasons I am putting out as many reels as possible to tell you about our world. And that's a reason that Matt has created quizzes. So some people like to take quizzes to say, hey, this is who I would be. Am I an explorer right now? Am I a builder? Am I a defender? So they'd figure that out. Once they figure out if they're a builder, explorer, defender, they would figure out which subcategory they are. As Matt was saying, are they a maker? Are they a breaker? Are they a supporter like Centrek? Or are they a strategist? We have explorer, pilot, climber, sprinter, mariner, and defender, vanguard, shield, stealth, or medic. Soon to be put in here is we'll ask what ability do they have? Do they have a transformation ability? Do they have an auric control ability, an auric projectile ability? We're going to talk more about that as we continue. And then we start to ask them, hey, what do they look like? What would the size be? Right? So we're going to say a smaller size when we're thinking here for Centrek. What color are they? And then describe it a little bit. We give little ideas. Does it look like an animal, right? A feline? Does it look more like a rodent? Does it look like a mythical creature? Does it look like a little bit of all of them? Is there a mix? Does it have wings? Does it have fins? Does it have tails, eyes? Does it have multiple of any of these? Cade created a beast and he had no eyes at all. And it was a blind beast. So when we want to give these frameworks to help a young kid or even a parent back into what their beast might look like. And then we ask them questions of where would it mostly live in Bastunia and what's its story. Now, for me, I'd write this out. I am not a drawer. Matt has made fun of my stick figure drawings enough, but some specifically kids love to draw the beast. So when we work with schools, this is actually the worksheet that we bring to schools. We have kids fill it out, whether they want to write things in or whether they want to draw it. And then we show you a way you can bring this beast to life. What we do is we take this information, we either jump on a call with that kid or we take what we have and we send it over to our buddy Evan, and he gives it a first stab, which is what we're doing right now with Centrac. And then for any kid out there being like, well, what if, poor Evan draws something that I would like to make changes to? Well, we have the editing process. So I'd go back to Josiah here and say, hey, Josiah, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? What would you like to change? And I'll right now sit down with the kid, ask him questions. Like we did this with Cade. He's like, could he have 4 legs instead of 2? And then we take that back to Evan to get a different stab. So that's our current process, right? Anyone here, Brittany, you're in here. If you're saying, hey, how would my daughter create a calling or create a beast within Bastunia? That's how she does it. You'd reach out to us. We'd send you this worksheet, and then you'd send it back. Now.
So can I interject real quick, Evan, based on the discussion we had this week? Something that you said to me this week is so simplified when we come to things are like how they represent a child or how they represent us in the prose, in the writing prose. This is obviously something that when I'm writing the origin story right now, we're going to start releasing chapters soon, and I encountered that you're going to have such a deep familiarity with your calling. When it's this beast that's sitting right next to you, you'll want to reference it in a way that feels very loving and intimate. It's like literally has a place within your thoughts. It's a pure extension of you. And so I found continuously wanting to relating to this experience that I have with my husky Kai, who Kai is a male dog, and when I think of relating to this creature, the most important creature in my life, it's a male. Where writing prose, I continuously was doing the same thing, like wanting the main character to connect with his beast in the same sort of way, like looking over at him, the beast, or her, the beast. And what Dylan had told me, which is so simplified, is so helpful to think about it, is that it's just literally the manifestation or the physical representation of a person's calling, like their purpose in life. This thing that will like walk out in front of them and help guide them on what they were made to do. It's not this male, it's not this female, it's not gendered whatsoever. It's just this extension of you that'll show you what's important to you.
Yeah, Matt, just in case the connection either is off on my side or it might be a little wonky on yours. So if I ever interject, I'm not trying to be a jerk. That's how I've looked at it when we first started. It's why I want to call these callings, right? Because I do think I want to hit in something that's deep within us that doesn't have to be male, female, like we would have a pet. It'd be like, no, this is my calling. This is what I am for right now in my life. This is what I'm set here to do. And of course, that's a difficult job when you're trying to write the prose, which would be the written word, like Matt is, because you can't just keep saying the word calling, So other words that we've come across is, familiar. I actually got that from John. He's a 9-year-old. He's one of our backers' kids. He's like, why don't you call it a familiar? That's what my dad calls it in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, oh, it's another cool name for it. Or a totem, right? We use the word it right now because it's like that's what it is. It's my calling. So we do want to have hit something a little bit deeper. So I don't know if I touched on that, Matt, but yeah, that was a tough part this week, trying to figure out as we write the prose, as we balance all of our creative energies into this, what it looks like. I do, though, if it's all right, Matt, I want to come back to Evan. Evan, like you're saying, we're trying to do this on a Facebook Live. This isn't fully representative of the creative process. If you were to wave your magic wand to really bring these to life the best way possible, what would that, or in the profession, what does that look like? I ask as your colleague, and also as if I was writing my own comments in Facebook about, hey, what would that look like? Because I do want to know. You might be muted. There's a chance you're muted.
You're asking Evan, right?
Yes, I'm asking Evan.
Yeah.
Going once, Evan. Evan going twice. Sold. We cannot ask Evan right now. We will go and start answering questions from this week. Questions people have for us, the creators, as we create this world of Bastunia. For those that are curious, we now have that's our first book. We now have our second book out, The Return, where we figure out what Joan does with her new calling and who her new calling is. So if you have questions for us on this world, on the lore, on the history, on the plotting, or just on the creative process as a whole, feel free to ask us in the chat. There is no such thing as a bad question because we're very early in this process. So I'm going to ask Matt. We had a question here is from Matt Seitz. What happens when you lose or change your calling? And I think you and I can go back. I can give my thoughts, or if you want to give your thoughts first, because I almost think there's two different questions. It's losing one's calling.
Yeah. Changing. Ask the full questions again. You cut out there a little bit for me. What happens when
you lose or change your calling in Bastunia?
Great question. Yeah, I love this. Let's answer the question. What happens when somebody loses their calling? There's a couple of instances.
I want change.
Okay, great. There's a couple instances coming up in the later books where we'll encounter people who have become separated from their callings. Now, when you're a kid and you're going through life, before you've really matured that connection between you and your calling, you can't wander too far away from these things. And as you get older, as you mature, as you solidify that connection, then it becomes more possible for you to expand that distance. And so we're going to meet some characters here in the future. If you've ever seen or read The Golden Compass, his Dark Materials series, they have their, I honestly don't know how to say this word, their demons, or be daemon. And there's a part in this story where these kids are like wandering aimlessly in the winter forest, having been separated from their demons. In that story, the kids are mad. It's like they've lost their souls. In our story, really truly think of it. Think of somebody in your life that is aimless, and they just don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and they're grasping at these things. It's like it's kind of compulsive. It's sad to see when somebody really has no idea what they should be doing with their life. They'll grasp at the shiniest thing that comes by them, and it is a bit maddening. Like to go your whole life not knowing what you're supposed to be doing, not knowing your purpose. You're going to be walking this line into madness. So at the beginning, if somebody lost their calling, they may just feel a little lost. If that continued for years, then you're going to see somebody progressively losing touch with reality. So they may be able to function, but you're not going to see them being a happy person.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now Dylan, you're muted. Oh, we're on fire today.
I'm back, baby.
I'll let you follow up to Matt before I jump back.
Yeah,
in.
let me follow up to Matt, and then I'll come back to answer your question. I am sorry, everyone. I'm still getting used to StreamYard. Blame it on me. It's all my fault. But we're actually going to have that coming up in the pros, right, of someone losing their calling. And we're also going to have it within our main story to a T, right? We're going to start to see what is this, or to a point, I should say. We're going to start to see what happens when it's been a long time. And we're going to start to also see what happens when it's been just a little bit of a time. We're going to meet a tribe of people that have been experimented on that aren't in the greatest of places right now because, very frankly put, they've lost their calling in life. Now, to answer the second question, which is what happens if they change their calling? So for anyone here that doesn't know, for the longest time in Bastunia's history, people could have multiple callings. So we'll see James actually has 4. He has 1 calling from each path, and 2 of them are twins. So his defenders are twins. He's the only person in Bastunia that has 4 callings, but it wasn't uncommon for people to have 3 callings for a while in Bastunia. Kind of similar to some of us. I feel like me when I first, 10 years ago, I was going down an explorer path in my life. I was traveling to different countries. I was living in Kenya. I was experiencing new things. I was pushing myself outside my comfort zone. I was seeking knowledge as much as possible. And I was in this explorer path of my life. And that lasted at least a decade. And I've recently moved back to my hometown of Port Huron, Michigan. Shout out Port Huron, Michigan. And I have bought a house. I've settled down. I've got married. I just had my first child 8 weeks and 2 days ago. And I start to see myself really liking the simplicity of this small town life. And I'd be leaning more towards a defender path, right? So if you think 10 years ago, I had my explorer calling with me. Do I still have that piece of Dylan within me? Of course. But what happens is as I would shift into this defender path in Bastunia, the god of Bastunia would gift me my defender calling to say, hey, you got a new calling in your life that you should put attention to. Should you completely forget where you were and where you came from? No. So to answer the question, I wouldn't lose one calling in replacement of another. I would now have both. But in my mind, I know which one came to me most recently. That's the path I'm going down in life right now. So when people create characters for this, I don't want you to think that this is a permanent thing. It's the path you're going down right now in life. I don't want it to feel rigid. We actually kind of played a trick on some people, Matt and I, when we first started this. And people are like, team defender all the way. I'm a builder till I die. And in my mind, I'm like, no, you can change. You're just going down this path right now. And that's fine. Some people don't change. And that's fine too. We're in Bastunia where everything is fine. Now I want to ask a question for Evan. When you were backstage, I don't know if you've heard me, but I kind of described the process. Okay, describe the process of creating it. People kind of filling out the worksheets. It goes to you. We do edits, and like you said, this is a little bit different than the typical creative process. What would that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, the distinction is that in a perfect world, any kind of design process is exactly that. It's a process, which means it's not something that necessarily happens performatively over the course of an hour with everyone watching, but it's more about the fact that it's iterative. So, for instance, right now, I've kind of latched onto, like I said, some of the touchstones for Centrac, like the feline and rodent sort of body language, the big forearms and claws to suggest burrowing and digging and things like that. But I haven't problem solved those choices to determine for sure whether or not they are, the most effective way to go. For instance, there are lots of animals that dig. What if instead of this kind of big tigery nose, which I think I was going for when I started, he actually had they actually had the nose of a star mole. How would that change their character design? Would that be a good choice? Probably not great in this case, but it's a choice
Josiah,
that would need to be. It's a choice that would need to be problem solved. I would need to actually apply that and see, how does this work? How does this change the visual statement? How does this make change the read of the character? And maybe there are more effective combinations out there or decisions out there that would lead to a better design. And all of that is part of an iterative process that involves, experimenting with different body types and shapes and shape language and different details. And, once you get into color and value, like I'm kind of just starting to fill them in with a gray.
Mm-hmm.
The values organization is also like every one of these steps are things that would be iteratively stress tested and problem solved. So that's the ideal.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone has deadlines. Everyone has preconceived notions or expectations of what they want or pressures from stakeholders, whatever it may be, that can determine how a process plays out. But that's my answer. In an ideal world, there is the room for that iteration to really find the ideal visual statement.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in a perfect world, you get to go back and forth and have a full conversation. It's just what that adds to your workload and like the capacity you take on. Do you think there is a perfect amount of, let's say, edits or amount of back and forth that should take place? Because I also feel like if you were to tell someone, which we don't, hey, we'll go back and forth 20 times with you, it's almost you get this like paralysis. I guess this, and then something changes, and you're like, no, can we go back? Like, do you feel it's best to have a specific number range to go back and forth with someone to get to the best desired outcome?
No, I mean that's way too holistic of a question to answer, and it's really not even necessarily about the back and forth with, say, the client. It's very much like a personal journey. For instance, one way in which I actually really like to start designs is in pure silhouette rather than line. So I might actually just try a bunch of different ear shapes and kind of see how those feel, or different girth of neck and how that changes my read of the character. And just really take it back to a very foundational, very simple, how do we want to do this, for basically every step of the way to determine, what is the best way forward for this creature or this character. These are really, really bad silhouettes, but you spend maybe 2 minutes on each, you pump out 10 to 20 of them, and it gives you an idea of, what's going to work, what feels right, what doesn't, and you go from there. There's a saying that I like to use a lot, which is that your first idea is never your best, even if it is.
I remember I was actually at an event when Matt and I were colleagues together that John Maxwell was speaking at for selfpublishing.com. And one of the questions was, I don't know how they worded it, but they're like, I'm going back and forth on my first book I just don't know. How do you get through the mindset of, that first book? And his answer, Matt, you can correct me if you want here, but I'm paraphrasing. He's like, well, we'll just put it out. It's not going to be that good. And this is a guy that's made, hundreds of thousands of dollars off of books, and he's put out really, really good books. But it's this mindset of, we'll just put something out. You can always go back and make it better, just like we're going to get better as we create this. And Evan, I love your humility, man, but my God, this is a really cool beast. Go ahead, Matt.
He said a lot of profound things. The thing that actually stuck with me the most out of everything they said at the conference, and John Maxwell is actually going to be at this conference that I'm at in Orlando speaking tomorrow, funny enough. One of the things that stuck out the most, though, he's like, I called my editor as I was writing my 7th book. I'm like, I think I'm figuring out this writing thing. And it's like so helpful for people that are just massive perfectionists. It's like the guy published 6 books prior to writing this 7th one, and maybe he didn't even feel like he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I really think it's I'd love your thoughts here, Evan, I don't want to say pure creative, because I actually want to get across that being creative does not mean you have to be what Evan does. People can be creative, and you could want to be an athlete, right? But from the process, one of the things that is stuck out with me lately is like, man, just get started. Because if you really love doing this, then even when it sucks, but you're doing something you love. right? And I think some people are like, oh, I can't, it's got to be perfect because I love it and because it's my passion. And then because of that, they never get started because they're so scared to like break this precious egg where it's like, man, you loved, just continue to try. Was it difficult for you, Evan, when you first got started with this because you're like, I want to be good at it? Or was it more of like, all right, I'm going to mess up? Like, how did it hit you?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult. I mean, I had a very circuitous career journey for anyone who's familiar with it. I spent a lot of time in kitchens, which is a very intense place to be when you don't know what you're doing. And so I had the fortune to work with some extremely talented people and some extremely motivating people and some extremely good mentors in that time. That sort of got me through the wall of imposter syndrome, I guess, to the point where when I did finally try to pursue art as a real skill, it was a lot easier. I was older. I was in a more mature place. I had a better attitude about how this was going to go. But yeah, I mean, I was terrible at it. Everyone is terrible at anything when they first start, and if you're not, well, that's just luck. That's not really an indication of whether or not this is a skill that can be learned and earned over time. Some people definitely have more affinity for certain things starting out. That doesn't mean that down the road that playing field isn't going to level off, especially if the person who relies on talent for their entire journey, and then they feel that they never have to really work to improve that skill set or really learn like the technical pedagogy behind it. All of that can really propel one forward. Same goes for art. I've met so many people who think that I don't have any talent, I can't draw, I would never be able to do that. And like, yeah, yes, you could. If you can learn how to use Excel, then you can learn how to draw. It's just a matter of time, mileage, work, and the right sort of tools and pedagogy. A lot of people think that it's some magic hidden talent, being creative. Well, being creative is a tougher skill, but it is still a skill. You can practice being creative every day, and you can practice what it takes to, come up with new ideas on a regular basis and follow through with them. That follow through is something that is really often missing from the equation.
And I honestly think that's the part that also makes it beautiful, right? And I'd love your thoughts on this too, Matt. To just be naturally talented at something and not having to struggle it almost feels like you would be creating a journey that's boring. And you turn your passion into something that's boring because there's no trials and tribulations up and down. You're just always naturally good at this. And
I will add to that.
Yeah.
I think anything that I do that I've gotten at this point in my life, like you can do the same thing and be like, whether that's, sales in my job, like you can you have this unconscious competence to something, then you can just do it and not really even be conscious of what you're doing. I catch myself finishing sentences that I don't remember starting, but I've said this sentence so many times. It's just like, I know this works. I'm just going to say it. It's only when what really seems to add the spice back into things that I feel I have an unconscious competence for, that I've often worked for, because it doesn't start there, is like looking at the little nuances of a skill or of a task that you can just get better in this little way. This tiny improvement, when you really go down your own rabbit hole and say, in this particular instance and opportunity, I'm going to focus on this thing and master this thing. And there's endless amounts of rabbit holes that you can go down. Like you can be great and have an unconscious competence and be great, but you can always get better. And if you're like engaged in the act of writing or drawing, painting, or doing anything creative, you should be aware of those areas that you can improve.
For sure.
If there's anything else that we want to speak on, I'm sorry. There's one comment that came in with it of like, someone said, and I wish I knew where this was. I was trying to find it on Facebook. It's making me want to draw my own creatures for my world, but drawing has always been I can't naturally do that, so I won't. And now I wouldn't know where to start trying to make my creature. So I have a thought on this. Evan, I would love your thought on someone who's, they have their own world out there. Where would you say get started? I have my own thoughts on frameworks, but you're the creator of Centrac right now.
The easiest thing the easiest and quickest thing to say is just do it, but that's very, very reductive and definitely not what you want to hear. So I fully understand that. So what you're asking, the way I would think of it and phrase it is you're asking how to design and draw believably from your imagination. And that is kind of the penultimate of what a lot of people out there who build their own worlds and IPs, they really wish that they could do and want to do. And it's a lot more difficult than I think a lot of people give it credit for. A lot of times it's reduced to, cartooning or the impression of cartooning, which is actually a very complicated form of design sensibility. But, the best way to get there is to start by just drawing what you see, drawing from observation, figuring out what you do see and what you're not seeing, what the delta is between what's coming out on paper and what you're actually seeing with your eye. I can offer plenty of resources on ways to get started with observational drawing or exercises that can help get you more confident and quicker at it. But that's really, by and large, the way to start. I mean, there's a reason why, like, the master animators and storyboard artists, what they do is they do regular life drawing. So that's really, really a big part of it. Because once you have that foundation of drawing from life, drawing from observation, you're both building your visual Rolodex, your vocabulary. It's like studying vocabulary cards for a new language. And you're also learning the rules of how things behave in reality, like light and shadow, so that you can then manipulate those rules in your own fashion to suit your own creative needs or narrative brief in order to really craft the world that you'd like and keep it believable. You don't want to completely break that sense of reality. And to really simplistically demonstrate what I mean here, if I just copied and pasted Centrac, another version of Centrac right here. If I let's shrink them down. And then let's just give them a really, really giant head. I mean, at some point, obviously there's cleanup that can happen here. They need to be sort of married to each other. But at some point, we're starting to break the sense of what could believably be. And part of that is the relationship of proportions that we're seeing here. We don't necessarily really believe that this body and the way it behaves and locomotes could support this giant head. We don't see a design language, a visual language that really suggests that this is part of a world where it's completely okay to see, a character with those kinds of proportions. Sometimes that may be all right, where you kind of embrace that degree of stylization, but there are a lot of visual cues between the way a lot of the anatomy is handled, a lot of the detail that we do have, some of the musculature that we have suggested, that is speaking in a different visual language. So it's like trying to suddenly insert a piece of kanji into a sentence in Portuguese. It doesn't really work that way. Maybe you have someone who reads both, but it's going to completely change the meaning and readability of the image. So believability is how you make a character feel like they could believably exist within their own set of rules. So everything from proportion of head size to the rest of the body, everything from, just let me get a red here. The way that I kind of approach this rim lighting, which, by the way, unrelated, is the most single overused piece of an artist's arsenal. So if you're really looking for a quick tip, rim lighting it goes a long way. Even just the way I approach the rim lighting is a decision that could have been made very differently. A lot of times you will see, especially in comic art, you'll see rim lighting that is literal rim lighting, where it just follows the outside form of a figure. But, that's not really how light works. It wraps around forms. It wraps around and catches on different planes of an organic or inorganic form. And so incorporating that into rim lighting is a stylistic choice that can contribute to or break the believability of a character. I feel like I'm getting off the rails here and kind of overwhelming, which is not my intention. It's just to say that start from life, start from what you see, start from what you observe, and that will give you all of the tools that you need to then reassemble that illusion of life to be what you want and how you want it. If you want to create your own world of creatures, you will, in the process of drawing from life, you'll develop your own stylistic choices, your own way of solving visual problems. And all of those will come through when you decide to start trying to visually develop your own world. All of this is to say, and this is the last thing I'll say before I shut up, because I've been going for like 15 minutes.
That's on record.
Is don't let not drawing from life stop you from drawing your world. You can, as Dylan said, always go back and rework it and retool it and improve it. But you will still learn things. You will still improve, and you will still discover things about your world that you wouldn't have otherwise if you had not chosen to just sit down and draw it, even if they're all stick figures. And if I could, I would pull up Dylan's storyboards right now for Tales of Bastunia, just to show you exactly how valuable that exercise can in fact be. I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're stick.
Not for being done. Thank you for making fun of me.
Evan, if I could elaborate on that question a little bit. I know the person asking the question rather intimately.
I would bet you do. You bet you do, Matt.
Yeah. It's Bella. This is it's a question coming from somebody who's naturally very quickly good at everything, and if there is even a short period of time where she's not good at something, it's like the frustration. She probably hasn't felt frustration in her abilities very much in her life, and so when she's not good at something, it's like the frustration. So how do you get through the frustration of not being immediately as good as you?
I draw Batman. my answer, I mean, I can't answer that for Bella, but for me, whether it's creative block or just really not feeling creative on a given day, which absolutely happens, I will often just kind of sit down and draw some Batman. Why? Because he's an extremely graphic and easy, approachable figure to draw. It's very, very easy to draw Batman. And once I draw a couple of these where it's just pure silhouette, experimenting with how pointy do I want those bat ears, or do I want to carve out his eyes like the animated series or whatever, then I can take it further and I say, okay, well, let's add some form to this. And I'll, start carving out that big Batman chin that we all know and love. And you can start, you go from there. You just develop it little by little. And all it is like an easy win for myself, as well as a fun exercise. Just kind of sit down and do. And so sometimes that has developed into full on like grayscale portraits of Batman. Sometimes it's developed into full on illustrations. Obviously, Batman, it would be a fan art piece, which is not something I'd like put in a portfolio, but that's what often gets me through. And I guess what I'm trying to say is find that for yourself. It's really trite to say, oh, we'll just push through, just keep doing it. Sure, but there are easier ways to do that. And one of the best ways that has always helped me is to find an easy win and go for it. Sit down and draw draw a perspective grid and just draw some boxes, whatever it is that is going to help you get through that feeling. It's never going to go away. You will always be frustrated as an artist. So embrace it, figure out how to navigate it. That is part of the skill set that you're building.
Yeah, big things that I took from this is Dylan breaking it down into Dylan layman terms, is draw what you know. Like easy things to get started, like what you see in the world. Draw what you know. Draw what you're good at, or like a quick win, right, to get going. Get started, right? And this is for everybody. Clearly, like Bella's actually working on a huge world, so this isn't just for Bella. Get started being a big one. And then the last one is like that I just took from it is give yourself time. Like to feel like we're gonna draw something the very first time, and like we put it down, like, oh, cool, that's what Evan does. It's like we're gonna probably have to draw someone that's getting started. I even think of Josiah. He'll probably have to draw consistent rodent-like creatures to start to say, what is it that I really like about drawing this? He's like, I'm really good at drawing these ears and like facial features. And then he starts drawing, felines. And he's like, what is it that I like about this? So that takes time. Like it takes, a good couple of hours to draw, let's say even a rodent. So realizing this is going to be a longer process, and the longer we take to put it off, the longer it's going to take to get to where we're at. So it kind of comes back to get started and then realize it takes time.
Right, exactly.
We have, let's go like five, no more than 10 minutes. There's a couple other questions. Here's the one thing that I would put is I love working through frameworks, and someone put this in the chat earlier. They're like, wow, this is giving me Stitch vibes.
Hey,
and I love it.
Look at that. I did not see that until just now. You're absolutely okay. Full disclaimer, there's a lot of Stitch vibes and a lot of things that I do. I love Stitch. Stitch is definitely like one of the most well-designed animated characters ever. Everything about that movie,
animation.
in fact.
Right? More of an American animation to Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's crazy because Matt and I have spoke to a lot of aspiring fiction authors on the phone looking to get their fiction book out there, and like I've said that to people before. Oh, this gives me his Dark Material vibes, and it's wild, Matt. You can speak to this if you want as well. How many people get like tense about that? They're like, well, no, it's different. But it's not like that. And they there's this something in their mind being like, I'm copying off of somebody else, and it's like in my mind, yeah. Evan was influenced by Stitch. I was definitely influenced by his Dark Materials when I started understanding what a daemon or a demon is, right? I was definitely influenced by Hunter x Hunter when it comes to Nen and how we use aura. Like, that's a good thing. That's standing on the shoulders of giants that came before us and saying, how can we make this my own? And I think a lot of people, when they see something new, it's a natural reaction to be like, oh, a Bastunia is kind of like a Pokemon vibe where you have your own little companion. And I could get frustrated and be like, no, it's completely different, or not trying to catch them all. Or I can be like, yeah, let me give you an avenue or a lens to start to view our world through. I actually use that and tell some kids like, hey, does it look like a Pokemon to you? Does it look like, there was a Pokemon influence for Josiah. So I think like being able to use frameworks of what we already know in order to create makes creating, which is very, very difficult, easier. And creating is fun as heck. Anything you want to speak to that, Matt? I might be just.
No, I agree. Still like an artist. We're always going to be influenced by things. I try to think of when I have these feelings reading a story, whether I'm tearing up, whether I'm jumping for joy internally, physically, like I think of what are the components that orchestrate that emotion, and I want to. Usually, there's things that are really real that I can connect with. We're all humans living lives, going through our lives with the emotional ups and downs. It's like these things are really relatable. So if there's something that's done really well in a Brandon Sanderson novel, which I've been so inspired by, Pokemon lately, as you mentioned, and these are the things that as a kid were so formative. And I want to bring those same things to kids today.
Yeah. I think when we have more forms of communication now, which there's more forms of hearing from people of what you're doing is you're just kind of ripping off people that have done it. It's like, when we continue, if we hear this, I can see how it's easy to get in our head. But I think the biggest thing is like, it's harder to push those thoughts to the side, but push those thoughts to the side because that's going to allow you to create your own way. I'd love it if decades from now, someone's like, I kind of want to have a Bastunia vibe to what I'm doing. It's like, that's an honor. That's not ripping me off. It's go continue to create. And last thing that I'll say when it comes to creation, and then I want to come to a last question that we'll all answer before we sign off today, is like the power of creating for anyone here is like, I'm working with colleagues of mine right now that are 20, 30 years old. We're working with kids, and y'all are using your imagination to create something. And we want this to be your calling, but it also helps us influence what some of the callings and beasts are going to look like in Bastunia. So let's say, for instance, this goes to Josiah, which I love Centrac. Gosh, I like I love Centrac, right? And this goes to Josiah, and he goes, man, I really like it, but could he have 6 legs instead of 4, right? Could we give him wings? And I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to take this back to Evan, and we want to make Josiah's calling. But here we go. But what Evan and I would love to do is be able to still take this calling and this creature to put into our world. So whether you're using your imagination and your first draft gets into the world of Bastunia, or your last draft or your final draft gets into the world of Bastunia, you're giving us inspiration to continue to create and continue to build this world through not just our imagination, but your imagination. So if Brittany, if you're still here and your daughter wants to create a calling, the power behind using your imagination to create for something bigger than yourself, I think is what young kids need to start seeing more of, right? Because then they're saying, oh, my creation did that. Me creating, me thinking of something and working towards it created this. Look, it's out there, which then gives them more motivation to do what they do. So we thank anybody here that is vulnerable and courageous enough to put their imagination to the test and create their own calling. It's wild that it's a lot easier for kids. It's not that wild than it is for adults. I think a lot of adults get in their heads about their imagination more than kids. Kids are like, yeah, look at this. We will be continuing to work with schools. So we will have more and more callings and beasts to create. So if you would like to create one for yourself or anyone in your life, or you like to donate to a kid that we work with in a class, please feel free to reach out. We are always welcome to talk to our followers and see how we can bring your imagination into our world. That being said, the people that are here, the last question actually also comes from Bella earlier, who's a top contributor. I just saw the badge. Congrats for being a top contributor, Bella. What's your favorite part of the creative process? And I'm going to call this the co-creative process. Thank you, Bella. What is your favorite part of the co-creative process? And what's been the biggest pain thank you for not swearing. What has been the biggest pain in the butt in the co-creative process? All of us get to put our egos aside when we answer this question. And not to put anybody on the spot, but Matt, I would love for you to answer first. Evan, you're next. One more time. Yeah, the question is, what's been your she just said the process, but I'm going to call it the co-creation process. What is your favorite part of the co-creative process? And what's been the biggest pain in the butt?
I think that coming into this project after you, nice, I love this, after you've already spent 4 or 5 years thinking about some of these things, my favorite part, to pump your tire here, like truly, because I hate you, but I love working with you. You talk about these these frameworks that giving a box in order to think in the box and understand the box so that they can then think outside of the box. The defender, explorer, builder framework for considering what path you're on. Like a lot of these frameworks for really just understanding yourself. I've been loving building a story around such deep philosophical ideas, while at the same time, we're also just having a really good time with characters telling a fun story, but it goes so deep. I've always been, I've always thought of world building as my favorite part of the process. And I have this essentially sort of like this geographic file cabinet brain. That's why I love world building so much and creating maps so much is I can make a really broad world, but I've never gotten to a point where the world is both broad and deep. And so the co-creation process with you, Dylan, and more with Evan as well, is creating depth in places that that I would never think to create depth. You know, it's not smoke and mirrors. It's like some of the principles in these stories are speaking to a depth in my humanity that I'm learning so much about myself creating this.
I love that. And what's your biggest pain in the butt of the co-creative process? Evan, you're next.
We're all pretty, we're all pretty graceful. But we're also, and we're all pretty, we're able to set our egos aside quite often, but we're also people, like, and we have emotional ups and downs. And so I don't think too much about it because we are good friends, but I think pain in the butt would be the times that I know I'm asking a question and it's striking a nerve, or that question is coming at a moment where you're in chaos in your life and you really want to answer the question, but you've got 20 other things to do. And it's just like, I know that I've just touched a nerve. That's going to be, you know, come naturally with throw ideas around. I'm really excited about working about this right now. And you're doing other things. You have a baby. It's like, I can't move always at the pace that I want to.
Yeah, it is. It's like when we're not at the same frequency at that moment in time when it comes to the ideas. It can be difficult for sure. Evan, I don't want to elaborate on any of these because I just want to take a couple more minutes while we wind down. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Let us know where you're from. If you're still here, let us know what path you feel you are going down right now in your life. You're going down the builder path. Are you going down the defender path right now? Are you going down the explorer path? I am transitioning from explorer to defender. That's me. But the question is right now that we're answering, what is your favorite part of the co-creative process? And what is the biggest pain in the butt? Evan.
Well, you know, you guys really believe in what you're selling essentially, and that's genuinely something that can be very difficult to find these days, especially, you know, as a moonlighter. And so it's really nice. It's really invigorating. It's really empowering when you get the opportunity to be a part of a process with people who want to be there doing what they're doing. In fact, I think that's something that I've said in every single job interview so far. At some point, I always get asked, like, you know, how did you end up cooking, or how did you end up in so and so kitchen? And it's like, because it's weird when you show up for a software engineer job and you've got pastry cook on your resume. And my answer is always and always has been, I wanted to work with people who wanted to be where they were. And, you know, it's not to say that there aren't people cooking not because they dream of being a chef or anything, but the point of the specific places where I ended up working and the people I ended up working with is exactly that. I learned the most from teams that were comprised of people who really wanted to be where they were. Most of those did happen to be kitchens, where I found also some of the strongest mentors. Anyway, the point being, that really shines through with Matt and Dylan.
Thanks. If you just, okay, I was gonna say, continue. Sorry.
It's very much a big part of why I stick his hair.
You cut in and out towards we got you at, and I could be wrong unless Matt, you heard it. It's a big part of why you stick around, and then hair.
Yeah. The biggest pain in the butt, I said, is actually Artie's hair. That's the biggest pain in the butt for me, because I designed his hair with way too many forms, and this is for a comic, and so I'm drawing him like 1,000 times, and it's always his hair, which just kind of feels like a bunch of rollers, like hair rollers. And it looks great. Yeah, okay, it's a lot. His hair's a lot. It's way too much, and this is an example of not being iterative enough. Actually, no, I was iterative, because I gave you a version of Artie, and you literally said, "Can we make his hair curlier?"
Yeah.
Now, it is on me, though. There is probably a better way I could have handled that. But we're locked in now. Artie's hair is forever going to be like Maji's horns. It's just going to be one of those things that I'm going to have to just close my eyes and breathe through every time I need to draw him.
I'm only laughing at the last thing you said. Spoiler alert, if anyone wants to mute me right now, it might not always be the case for one of what you just said.
I remember.
But basically, Evan's least favorite part or biggest pain in the butt is Artie's hair and me asking to make it curlier. You're welcome. You are welcome. Man, I'm going to answer this from where I'm at right now. Right. So I'm going to answer just like, not if I were to reflect on everything. It's like where I'm at right now. My favorite part of the co-creative process is there's a reason I put the word fool under my name. I am with two extremely, extremely talented beings at their craft. I read comics for a reason. I don't like reading long chapter books. Like, this is boring. And I am enthralled every time I read Matt's work. And I'm like, it's in my mind. I'm like, part of me thought of this. That's so cool. And it's put together by this like artist of the written word. And I love American style animation. I knew I wanted to work with Evan from the beginning when I was getting ridiculed on that Facebook post and seeing that I'm like, I don't even want to make it an interview process. We still did, but Evan is just very, very, very talented. And the other part of the co-creative process is what it turns into when you let other people step up. Like, I thought it would suck, but being like, when Matt starts to bring, he's like, well, what if we did it this way? And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's not what I created in the beginning. But I take a deep breath and I let him step into it. I'm like, oh yeah, let's run with this now. Like, that's actually fun because it's this resistance and I learn right after it. Biggest pain in the butt is like knowing what we can make and working with patience. I think any of these guys that work with me know that I unfortunately have to be the deadline guy. I think that's the other biggest pain in the butt is I am the fool with two artists. And in my mind, I'm like, what am I doing? And I think that's just wrestling with the ego at times. But having the patience, I think, can be tough sometimes. And it's like, that's on every part of the process. It's having patience on myself as I continue to try to put reels out and work with schools. Like, it's just, they don't know what we're creating yet. And it's going to take time for me to get that message across and for us to get that message across. So I'd say both, but man, I would not I'm a huge advocate of the co-creative process. Shout out to the Inklings. This is just the newest version of the Inklings, is working with talented people to get messages out there. So for us to continue to do it, we will be running more Kickstarters, and we love the support that you give us. And this is the last sales pitch. If you would like to bring a character to life, if you would like a comic for yourself, if you would like to support our mission, feel free to always reach out. Stay tuned for our next Kickstarter. We will put our link tree in the comments so you can check it out. Follow us on multiple platforms. I mean, we really do, very honestly, we exist because of your support, and we're gonna continue to grow with it. So thank you so much for everybody. Thank you so much, Michelle Kinna, for supporting young Josiah, and thank you, young Josiah. Can we have one more Just Send Track view thanking Bella? Thank you, Josiah, for tapping into your own imagination and creating it and allowing us to help you. That's it from me. We appreciate you all. We hope you have a great weekend, and we will be back in another 2 weeks to go through another calling / beast creation, maybe this time with more appendages.